The incredible story of Gideon, 300 soldiers, divine victory, and God's transforming plan revealed. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, for 6 long years, Israel trembled under the harsh oppression of the Midianites. They descended like a swarm of locusts upon the land, leaving devastation in their wake. Gideon, a humble farmer from the tribe of Manasseh, was among those who suffered greatly. In the dead of night, he crouched low in a winepress, secretively threshing wheat to protect it from theft. Fear clung to him as tight as the cool night air, but it was there, in that dark place, that the angel of the Lord appeared, radiant in glory. "Valiant warrior," the angel declared, piercing the weight of his despair. Gideon's heart raced. He felt unworthy of such a title. "How can I save Israel?" he lamented, "a mere farmer from the least of tribes. My clan is the weakest, and I am the least in my father's house." Yet the angel of the Lord replied with compassion, promising divine presence and assurance. Seeking confirmation, Gideon asked for a sign, and so God graciously revealed his power. As he set a bowl of meat and unleavened cakes upon the stone, the angel touched it with the tip of his staff, igniting the offering in a consuming fire. Left without a trace, Gideon's self-doubt began to dissolve, replaced by a dawning realization. He was chosen. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Emboldened, Gideon rallied together an army of 32,000 men, ready to face the Midianite threat. Yet, with a voice clear as thunder, God commanded him, "The people with you are too many." Confusion enveloped Gideon like a dark cloud. How could he hope to defeat such a vast enemy with so few? Obediently, he listened as God directed him to send home those who trembled in fear. One wave after another, the crowd dwindled, 25,000 soldiers dismissed, leaving him with merely 300. Armed not with swords but with trumpets and torches hidden within clay jars, Gideon shivered in uncertainty. How could they endure against an army unnumbered? Yet he steeled his resolve, clinging to God's promise. That night, cloaked beneath the cover of darkness, he set his tiny band around the Midianite camp. Hearts wavered as the air buzzed with tension, hands trembled around the concealed torches, and Gideon's spirit soared with a flicker of hope. At the appointed hour, a silent command echoed within him, and they shattered their jars. "For the Lord and for Gideon," they cried, their voices ringing throughout the valley. The sound shattered the stillness, an echo of divine victory. The Midianites, gripped by confusion, turned their weapons upon one another, unraveling in chaos. In the midst of this uproar, as dawn light began to break, Gideon found himself at a crossroads of faith and inadequacies. The miraculous victory was not merely the result of strategy, it was a demonstration of God's sovereign might. Standing among the reveling Israelites, he pondered profoundly, had God truly chosen him, a humble farmer from Manasseh, to lead his people to freedom? With faith ignited, he awaited the unfolding of God's great purpose. What wonders would God reveal next? When the sun rose over the horizon, its golden light spilled across the valley, illuminating the remnants of the Midianite camp, now strewn with the fallen. The air was thick with the scent of victory, yet Gideon's heart beat a rhythm of reverent awe. How could one man, one humble farmer, be used in such a profound way? The Israelite warriors, filled with elation, surrounded Gideon, their faces radiant with joy. "What shall we do now?" they called with enthusiasm, still caught up in the rush of triumph. Gideon, though uplifted by their mirth, felt the weight of leadership settle upon his shoulders like never before. "Gather the people," he instructed, raising his voice so it might reach far. "We must pursue the Midianites and not allow them to escape, for it is our deliverance and God's promise that guides us." With newfound purpose, the Israelites rallied, pursing the remnants of the Midianite forces, remnants that scattered like leaves before an autumn wind. As they advanced, the courage infused by God's victory sustained them, and Gideon led the charge with a fervor ignited deep within. Yet, despite this momentum, as they pressed into enemy territory, weariness began to creep upon Gideon's heart. What if the strength to pursue faltered? What if fear took root again? He sought God in prayer, lifting his concerns to the heavens, asking for guidance. "O Lord, show me the path. Is your hand still upon us?" His voice was a whisper, but his heart cried out with earnest sincerity. Even as he prayed, a runner approached, breathless, with news that weighed heavily. "Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian, have fled toward Karkor, leaving the way of the valley open." The report cut through his prayer like a sword. The kings had escaped, and Gideon's spirit stirred with holy indignation. "They shall not slip through our grasp. They have oppressed us for far too long." "Prepare for battle," Gideon commanded, summoning the men to press onward. Their pursuit became a testament of shared faith, and as they followed God's divine direction, Gideon felt the familiar tug of God's presence encouraging him not to waver. As they approached the region where the kings lay in wait, Gideon heard the distant sound of voices. They were plotting, understanding how the tides of the battle had turned. "Here, we shall surprise them," Gideon resolved, rallying his men in tight formation. When night fell, Gideon stealthily approached the enemy camp. It was a scene of vulnerability, human hearts cloaked in false security. Quietly, he whispered to his men, "The God of Israel is with us. On my signal, remember our calling. Let us put our trust in him." As they prepared for the encounter, Gideon sensed the urgency of God's hand upon him. Their torches were ready, their spirits emboldened by the victory already promised. Clarity surged within Gideon. This was not merely a battle of flesh and blood, but a confrontation with the darkness that had enslaved them. As he gestured, they rushed into the fray, torches illuminating the dark, their voices ringing loud in triumphant declaration once more. "For the Lord and for Gideon." At that moment, Gideon felt the weight of yesterday's fears shatter, replaced with a fervent understanding of God's sovereign plan. Would God's mighty hand deliver them once and for all from the Midianite scourge? With eyes wide open, he stood ready, knowing full well that every act of bravery was the unfolding of divine prophecy. What remained in the unseen was a question echoing through the heavens, interwoven with God's promise. What greater victory awaited that would establish Israel not just as free, but as a people marked by divine destiny? And it came to pass that as the Israelites surged into the enemy encampment, terror gripped the hearts of the Midianites. The sudden blaze of torches and the loud shouts reverberated against the hills, stirring fear among the kings Zebah and Zalmunna. Frantically they rose from their slumber, confusion gripping their senses as they beheld the advancing army. In that moment, as the warriors of Israel rushed upon them like an unrelenting tide, the Lord moved mightily. The Midianites turned upon one another, their panic igniting a frenzy as shadows danced amid the chaos of the camp. It was as if the very heavens had opened, and God himself descended upon the disordered assembly. Gideon, witnessing the unfolding of God's plan, felt the pulse of divine presence in every breath. "Fear not. The Lord has delivered them into our hands," he cried, bolstering the courage of his men. And so they fought valiantly, guided by faith. Swinging swords and hurling stones, the warriors pressed on, their destinies intertwined with sacred promise. With every foe that fell, Gideon recalled the words of the Lord spoken in secret moments. "I shall deliver you. You shall not falter." Again he felt the lifting of burdens, as fear was smothered in the light of purpose. As the sun began to rise, casting vivid hues across the battlefield, Gideon sought the kings. "Where are they?" he inquired amidst the din. His officers replied, "They have fled to the east, across the waters. Let us pursue them while the light still shines." "Onward," Gideon commanded, rallying their steps with a fiery spirit. "Let none escape. This is our chance to reclaim what was stolen." They traversed the land, the taste of victory lingering in the air, emboldening every heart to chase down the enemies of Israel. Thus they pressed forward, the echo of their footsteps a testament to their resolve, each stride a declaration of faith. It was not by their strength that they fought, but armed with the knowledge of God's presence amidst them. As they approached the river where the kings had sought refuge, Gideon spotted them on the distant bank, weary and desperate. And it was then, in that sacred moment, that the providence of the Lord was unveiled unto Gideon. He remembered the words spoken to him. You shall strike down the proud, and they shall tremble before my might. With renewed vigor, he sent forth a message to the weary warriors. God is with us. He has prepared the way. Together, we shall see the kings delivered unto the mercy of our God. As they crossed, the waters that once seemed a barrier turned into a means of deliverance. The kings, cornered and without escape, trembled as the Israelite warriors approached, the scent of their impending defeat heavy in the air. Gideon stood firm, the light of dawn illuminating his resolve, as he lifted his voice, proclaiming their victory in the mighty name of the Lord. Zebah and Zalmunna, the time of reckoning has come, he declared, emboldened by divine assurance. You chose to rise against the Lord's anointed. Today, your reign of terror shall end. And as Gideon advanced, a stillness blanketed the waters, echoing the solemnity of the moment. The fate of Israel, once lost, was now in their grasp, a promise unfolding in miraculous fashion. Yet even amid this victory, a deep whisper of mystery lingered. What more had God to reveal through them? The heart of Gideon, filled with triumph yet yearning for understanding, echoed a question. If this victory marked the beginning of restoration, what greater plans awaited, woven into the very fabric of their covenant with the Almighty? And Gideon approached the trembling kings, the weight of destiny heavy upon his shoulders. With every step, the ground seemed to reverberate with the promise of God's faithfulness. You have tormented the children of Israel, he proclaimed, but their cries have ascended to the heavens. Today, you shall reap what you have sown. Zebah, with a countenance marked by dread, looked upon the Israelites and waved his hand in defiance. We fought with the strength of a lion. It is but a game of chance that keeps you standing here. Your faith will not protect you in the face of our swords. But Gideon, unshaken, drew forth his sword. Your weapons have not challenged the Lord of hosts, for it was he who called me from the shadows and equipped me to prevail over you. And as he spoke, the sun broke forth from behind the clouds, its rays illuminating his countenance with celestial glory. Then began the fierce battle on the riverbank, the clash of steel mingling with cries of sorrow and defiance. The warriors of Israel, energized by the remembrance of the Lord's deliverance, fought with the fervor that only the assurance of divine backing can muster. Each blow struck upon the fierce adversaries bore the confidence of heaven behind it, as if angels themselves fought alongside them. Zebah and Zalmunna attempted to flee, their hearts quaking within their chests, but the relentless advance of Gideon's men cornered them like prey. There is no refuge from the righteous wrath of our God, one warrior shouted as he closed in upon the kings. At last, the moment of judgment came, and Gideon stood face to face with the haughty enemies. You believed yourselves untouchable, but the finger of God is upon you. With swift resolve, he commanded his men to bind the kings, thus sealing their fate. The cries of their defeat echoed through the valley, a testimony to the power of the Almighty who had moved in their favor. As the dust settled upon the land, Gideon knelt upon the ground, lifting his hands in praise to the Lord. O great God, I am unworthy to witness such wonders, yet you have made me a vessel of your will. His heart brimmed with gratitude, yet within him a poignant stirring remained. What lay ahead for Israel now that the enemy was vanquished? His soldiers gathered around him, fatigue etched upon their faces, but exhilaration echoed in their eyes. What shall we do now, O leader? They asked, the anticipation of a new dawn filling the air. Gideon rose, looking into the distance where the horizon met the gentle swell of the earth. We will return to our people with glad tidings. They have suffered long. Let us proclaim deliverance and lead them in praise. As they journeyed back, the hills echoed with their songs of victory. The hearts of Israel were set aflame with renewed hope. They had witnessed the Lord's mighty hand at work. Yet, as Gideon walked amid his people, a profound sense of unrest lay heavy upon him, as if the final chapter of their story was yet unwritten. In a moment of quiet reflection, He pondered the words whispered by the Lord at their first meeting. "You shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites." The victory was decisive, yet an unshakable conviction filled him. What greater trials await us? What hidden purposes does the Lord still hold? And as the dusk settled upon the land, a cloud loomed on the horizon, not of storm, but of promise, a hint that the journey of Israel was far from over. The plans of the Almighty were unfolding, whispering of a destiny intertwined with His covenant love. For our God is indeed a God of surprises. What mysteries shall be revealed next? Gideon mused, feeling the weight of God's sovereign plan still to come. And as Gideon and his men approached the camp of Israel, the warm glow of the setting sun cast a golden hue upon the weary faces of the people. A hush fell over the multitude as they beheld their returning champions, victorious against the might of their oppressors. The children of Israel gathered, eyes wide with disbelief and hearts pounding with fervent hope. "Behold, we have brought you news of great joy," Gideon declared, his voice rising above the throng. "The Lord has delivered us. Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian, are fallen before us. Let our voices lift in praise to the one who has fought for our freedom." The people broke forth into song, voices mingling with the melodies of the wind. "Sing praise to the Lord. He has done great things," they called out, their spirits ignited by the hope wrought from their victory. Mothers lifted their children high as the shouts of rejoicing rose like incense before the throne of heaven. But amidst the jubilation, a gnawing question loomed in Gideon's heart. What would be required of him next? He felt the touch of the Lord, stirring his spirit, whispering secrets yet unveiled. "Prepare your heart, Gideon, for greater things are yet to come," the voice echoed in his mind, beckoning him to a deeper understanding of his destiny. Then, an elder of Israel approached, his countenance solemn. "Gideon," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "though we rejoice, we must ponder the true cost of this deliverance. No victory is without its burdens. What shall we do with our enemies bound before us?" Gideon nodded, the weight of the elder's words resonating within him. "It is not only our enemies who must be dealt with, but also the root of their power among us. We cannot allow our hearts to be ensnared as they were. We must lead our people back to the path of the Lord, for the battle has only just begun." As the sun sank low, Gideon gathered the leaders of the tribes to deliberate. "Let us renew our covenant with the Lord," he urged, "for this is not a moment of mere celebration, but a calling to covenant faithfulness. For the Lord desires not just our victory, but our obedience." The leaders murmured among themselves, weighing the truth of Gideon's words. "What shall we do then?" they questioned, their faith tested. "Let us gather our families and come forth, presenting our hearts as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God," Gideon implored. "It is in our surrender that He will reveal His greater plan, for the Lord is with us, but will we walk with Him?" And so they vowed, there beneath the scattering stars, to recommit themselves to the Lord. They cast away their idols and offerings of the Midianites and began to forge a new path, aligned with the heart of God. With each pledge, Gideon felt the echoes of the covenant sealing their resolve, a sacred bond that would bind them together as one people before their God. Yet in the shadows, tension unfurled, for not all hearts were soft toward God's ways. A whisper circulated among the discontented, questioning Gideon's authority and stirring the old desires for rule and power. "Will the ways of this man lead us back into bondage?" they murmured in hushed tones. As morning broke and hope flickered like the dawn, Gideon stood watch over the gathered hearts of Israel, knowing the significance of their choice. Each heart was a battleground, and what lay ahead would test their resolve. In this dawning moment of renewed purpose, something deeper awaited, an unexpected journey that would lead them to the edge of a greater truth. As Gideon looked upon his people, they could not yet see the storm brewing upon the horizon, nor the far-reaching implications of their choices. "God's hand is not finished with us," he proclaimed resolute. "Great trials will challenge us still, but through them, His glory shall be revealed. Prepare, for the days ahead will unveil His sovereign plan, and we shall witness His faithfulness anew." And so it was that the story of Israel was only beginning, woven with divine promise, mysteries yet unveiled. a tapestry of faithfulness and purpose stretching far beyond the horizon, echoing through the annals of time. And it came to pass that after the celebration of victory, the hearts of the people of Israel remained heavy with unspoken fears. Gideon, though buoyed by the praise of his people, felt the burden of leadership weigh upon him. The echo of their song still lingered in the air, yet a tempest of uncertainty stirred within him. "Gather the leaders," Gideon instructed one of his trusted men. "We must seek the counsel of the Lord as we navigate these uncharted waters." And so, the leaders assembled once more, encircling Gideon beneath the oak at Ophrah. The ancient branches swayed gently, as if holding its breath for the words that would be spoken. "Brothers," Gideon began, his voice steady but the quaking in his heart evident. "The Lord has delivered us from the hand of Midian, yet this deliverance is a call to action, not a time for complacency. We must guard against falling back into the clutches of our own flesh and the allure of foreign gods." Reassurance flickered in the eyes of some, while others cast sidelong glances filled with doubt. Was it not easier to declare allegiance to their new king, hewn from the victories of battle? Perhaps Gideon's reign would wield the promise of prosperity, unencumbered by the burdens of divine obedience. As Gideon observed the murmurs, fear gripped his soul. "Listen," he said, raising his voice above the growing din. "The Lord commands us to eradicate the remnants of idolatry among us. These very idols were the source of our strife. What good is our victory if we return to the sin that led us into despair?" "Yet Gideon," murmured one warrior, "amidst victory comes a desire for a king, to rule us as others are ruled. Would not men thrive under a chosen leader, rather than perpetually waiting on the whims of divine instruction?" Gideon felt the heat rise within him, wrestling with the mantle of frayed leadership. "Do you not remember the depths of our bondage? The cries of our ancestors as they pleaded for deliverance? The Lord alone is king, and no man can bear the weight of this burden without great cost." With a steely determination, Gideon fell to his knees before the assembly. "Let us seek the face of the Lord, that he would reaffirm his covenant with us and guide our steps." The leaders hesitated, then joined him, forming a circle of penitent hearts. They lifted their voices in longing and prayer, beseeching the Almighty for wisdom and strength to remain true to his commands. Night descended upon the land as they sought the Lord, and silence enveloped them. After what felt like an eternity, a gentle whisper filled the air. "Go forth, Gideon, for you are chosen. Assemble your warriors once more, but the number shall be far less than you'd expect. For in weakness, my strength is made perfect." All present gasped, the revelation echoing through their spirits. "Who shall fight?" Gideon asked, awed and yet troubled. "How many shall rise with me?" The response came, a promise enveloped in reassurance. 300 shall bear my name into battle. They shall fight not by sword and spear, but in faith, for I shall show my mighty hand through your obedience." And Gideon's heart swelled with both fear and elation, a divine orchestration unfolding before him, as God's sovereign plan began to reveal itself through a cast of unlikely warriors. The tension of choice hung thick in the air, a threshold of obedience demanding their response. Like sparks igniting in the dark, so too was the hope of Israel now ignited again. The path ahead was fraught with unknown challenges, yet victory awaited those willing to follow. As dawn broke over the horizon, a new chapter began, and Gideon heard the promise of God's purpose resonate within him, stronger than ever. "For in these days," he declared, "we shall witness the manifestation of his unfathomable plan as the winds of change blow across our land." With faith enkindled and hearts aligned, they prepared for the journey ahead, knowing that the true battle was not merely against flesh, but one for their very souls. What divine strategies awaited them, and what greater authority would reveal itself through their commitment to God? The tale of Israel had only just begun to unfold, and the clouds of destiny gathered upon the horizon, promising a transformation they could scarcely imagine. And it came to pass that Gideon gathered his men, those chosen ones who bore the weight of his faith as they stood before him. Before them lay the expanse of the valley, the enemy camp sprawled before them like a dark shadow over the land. The night was thick with foreboding, yet the air vibrated with the tremor of divine promise. "Arise, you mighty men of valor. Gideon declared, his voice resonating with the fervor of the Lord's call. "If we are to march into battle, we do so in the might of our God. Fear not the multitude of the Midianites, for they are but a footnote in the grand narrative of our deliverance." At the sound of his command, he felt the stirrings of courage rise within those who had gathered. Each man stood firm, although a flicker of uncertainty remained in some hearts. They had heard the Lord's word, but battle awaited, and the numbers stood against them. "Look to the lamp in my hand," Gideon said, lifting the small vessel high, casting a flickering glow upon their faces. "As the Lord has shared, we are not to wield swords alone, but to break these vessels. Let our light shine forth in the darkness. With each fracture, may the cry of the Lord's army pierce the night." And so, Gideon instructed each man to carry a trumpet in one hand and a torch hidden within the vessel in the other. They moved forward under the cover of night, the weight of their purpose filling the silence with profound expectancy. When they reached the outskirts of the Midianite camp, Gideon halted, and with hushed reverence, he divided his men into 3 companies. "As I do, so shall you. When the time comes, lift your instruments. In one sound, awaken the echoes of heaven and earth." The stillness hung heavily all around, the moment pregnant with anticipation. Then, as the appointed hour arrived, Gideon raised his trumpet to the skies, and the brokenness of clay met with the ardor of faith. "The sword of the Lord and of Gideon," he proclaimed, his voice ringing out like thunder across the valley. With that declaration they broke their vessels, and outpoured the light, bright and unyielding, illuminating the darkness of the enemy's stronghold. In unison, the sound of trumpets filled the air, and the very earth seemed to reverberate with the courage ignited by obedience. What happened next was beyond comprehension. The Midianites, awakened from their slumber, were engulfed in confusion. They turned upon one another, their swords clashing in a frenzy of panic. The sound of the trumpets and the brightness of the torches, that which was once hidden, became their undoing. Gideon and his men watched in awe, their hearts swelling with the realization of the divine strategy unfolding before their eyes. They were but instruments, yet the Master orchestrated a symphony of deliverance through their faith. As the victory was secured, and the glory of the Lord shone brightly, Gideon knew deep within that this was not merely a battle won. It was a testament to the faithfulness of God and the power of a humble heart attuned to his will. "Behold," he spoke with earnestness, "what we have witnessed this night is but a hint of his greater plan. The Lord saves not by might but by faith, and the world shall know that there is a God in Israel." And amid the wreckage of Midianite defeat, as dawn painted the sky with hues of hope, Gideon felt the whisper of destiny stir anew in his spirit, of nations transformed, of hearts turning back to the one who delivers. For indeed, the true battle was not over. It had merely begun. As Israel emerged victorious from the ashes of conflict, a new revelation beckoned. What greater wonders awaited those who would walk in covenant with the Almighty, and how deeply would he etch his name upon the stories yet to unfold? And it came to pass that Gideon and his men stood amidst the stillness of victory, their hearts lifted by the marvelous deeds the Lord had wrought through simple vessels of clay. The dawn light shimmered upon the valley, revealing the remnants of the Midianite host scattered and defeated. Gideon, though exhausted, was fueled by the Lord's faithfulness as he surveyed the scene. "Go forth, my brothers," he called to his men. "Let us pursue the enemy and strike while the iron is hot. For the Lord has given us the road of victory, and we shall not let it slip from our grasp." With renewed vigor they gathered their belongings and set out after the remnant of Midian, guided by the promise of the Lord. Gideon sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, proclaiming, "Come down against the Midianites and seize the waters before them unto Beth-Barah and the Jordan." The warriors of Ephraim responded to his summons, gathering with swords sharpened and hearts emboldened, for they too desired a share in the victory. Upon reaching the enemy's camp, the men of Ephraim struck with fierce might, cutting down those who fled, and bringing the wrath of the Lord upon the doomed. And the Midianites trembled before the blade of Israel, for the hand of God was visibly upon them. Gideon, as he led this charge with humility, knew that this triumph was not of his own strength. "All glory and honor belong to the Most High," he declared, raising his hand in a gesture of surrender to God's counsel. As they pursued, they came upon 2 princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb, hiding in the strongholds of the mountains. Gideon, with wisdom divinely given, devised a plan. He sought the counsel of his men and instructed them, "Let us encircle them and make their end swift." The men, inspired by the Lord's hand, surrounded their enemies, and in a display of divine providence, Gideon captured Oreb and Zeb, bringing them before the people not merely as prisoners, but as trophies of a battle won by the Almighty. Oreb's head was brought to Gideon, the record would tell, and also Zeb's, and they were laid before the Lord as a symbol of his deliverance. Yet, amid the fervor of the victory, a murmur arose amongst the men of Ephraim. Anger and resentment simmered against Gideon, because he had not invited them to the initial conflict. They confronted him, voices rising in accusation. "Why have you not called us to battle? Did we not bring forth our swords to aid you?" With grace Gideon answered, "What have I done now in comparison to you? Is not the gleaning of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? For God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian. How then can I boast?" Gideon's humility quelled the anger of his brethren, and they turned their hearts back to unity and celebration of the Lord's work. And as Gideon led them onward across the Jordan, he sensed an increasing anticipation. The Lord was not finished revealing his great plan. A new chapter was yet to unfold. What lay beyond this victory? What further trials and triumphs awaited God's people as they walked obediently in his covenant? But perhaps the most pressing question lingered in the hearts of those who followed Gideon. Could it truly be that the silence of the past was a harbinger of greater fights ahead, battles that would shake the foundations of a nation? The whisper of destiny was louder now, echoing through the hills, reminding them, in the unfolding of God's sovereign will, nothing is ever lost, and every act of faith finds its place in his grand design. And it came to pass that after Gideon and his men had crossed the Jordan, fatigue weighed upon them, but was overshadowed by the divine fervor that surged in their hearts. They wandered into the land of Succoth, desiring sustenance for their weary bodies and a morale uplift for their torn spirits. Gideon approached the leaders of Succoth, entreating them, "Give, I pray you, loaves of bread unto the people that follow me, for they are faint, and I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." But the leaders of Succoth met his request with scorn, saying, "Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread unto your army?" At their words Gideon's heart burned, for he recognized this as a denial of the Lord's promise of victory. "When the Lord hath delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into mine hands," he replied, "then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness, and with briars." As darkness began to cloak the land, Gideon and his men pressed on. Their resolve remained steadfast, for the Lord had spoken to Gideon, saying, "Fear not, for I am with you." They continued their march, for the promise of God was a lamp unto their feet. Finally, they reached the tents of Midian with nothing but the cloak of night to shield them. Gideon, fearful yet emboldened, took his servant Purah and crept into the camp of the enemy. There, they overheard a man telling a dream to his companion, saying, "Behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian, and came unto a tent, and smote it that it fell, and overturned it, that the tent lay along." His companion responded, "This is nothing else save the sword of Gideon the son of Joash, a man of Israel, for into his hand hath God delivered Midian and all the host." As Gideon heard these words, the terror of the Lord surged within him. His heart, once tinged with doubt, now overflowed with assurance. He returned to his men, declaring, "Arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hand the host of Midian." Gideon divided his 300 men into 3 companies, and he placed in their hands trumpets and empty pitchers, with torches within the pitchers. "Look on me, and do likewise," he commanded, "and when I blow with a trumpet, I and all that are with me, then blow ye the trumpets also on every side of all the camp, and say the sword of the Lord, and of Gideon." As they approached the camp like a divine army of light and sound, at the moment Gideon and his men proclaimed the Lord's name. The Midianites awoke in confusion. They sprang from their beds, their hearts gripped by fear, and in disarray they turned upon one another, for the Lord had set ambushes among them. Thus began the rout of Midian, as the men of Israel pursued and struck them down. The great victory was not strengthened by numbers or arms, but by faith in the Almighty. It was a testimony to all of Israel of how the Lord uses the least to confound the mighty. But as Gideon stood victorious, a new shadow flickered on the horizon, a faint whisper of a greater struggle. The hearts of Israel were fickle, and the world beyond waited, darkened under the compulsion of disappointment and rebellion. Would the people remain faithful? Would they grasp the victory that God had wrought? In the quietness of the aftermath, the question echoed in the air. What sovereign purpose awaited the followers of God in the land of milk and honey? For within every triumph, a challenge stirred, and beyond every challenge, a new revelation. Gideon pondered deeply, knowing the path of true faith is rarely glimmering without trial. The unfolding of God's sovereign will transcended mere moments of valor, beckoning toward an eternal truth waiting to be unveiled. And it came to pass that following the resounding victory over the Midianites, the hearts of the Israelites swelled with praise and wonder at the act of God. Gideon, though exalted by their joyous shouts, felt the weight of leadership heavier than before. Victory is but a fleeting moment, he reflected, and the path ahead remained fraught with unknown challenges. "Gather the people," Gideon called, his heart burdening with the knowledge that their true battle was not with their enemies, but with the adversities of their own hearts. "Let us offer sacrifices of thanksgiving to the Lord, for his mercy endures forever." As the multitude convened, the air was thick with expectation. In gratitude they brought offerings, laying them upon the altar as a testament to the Almighty's faithfulness. Their voices rose in song, echoing joy and honor unto God, but even amidst their worship Gideon sensed a whisper of unease lingering in the hearts of the people. "Remember this day," he urged with fervent passion, "for it is the Lord who has delivered us from the hand of our oppressors. Yet let us not become complacent. Let us not forget our covenant with him." The people cheered, their hearts ignited by the light of courage and hope that God had spurred within them. But shadows of discontent simmered in the corners of far-off corners of the camp, as some hearts began to pine for the old ways, looking toward kingship and power as their focal point. "Will you follow the Lord or seek your own desires?" Gideon asked, searching the faces surrounding him. "For if we are to walk in his ways, we must guard against the lure of pride. Let not our hearts turn back to the idols of our past, for they are the source of our bondage." A murmur passed through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged glances of skepticism. In his spirit, Gideon felt the stirrings of God's hand, urging him to lead wisely. "I have not come to rule over you, nor am I your king," he declared passionately. "The Lord is our king. Let him guide you in this season of promise." Yet the struggles ahead would not be easily assuaged. The leader of one tribe stepped forward, speaking with bitter reluctance. "You have led us to victory, Gideon, but what shall come of our lives now? Shall we remain without a king as the nations around us? Surely it is better for us to have a ruler to guide us." Gideon inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of their expectation as darkness loomed, veiling the truth just beyond their reach. "I tell you this," he replied, his voice steady. "A king can only rule if the hearts of the people are aligned with God. We must renew our commitment to him if we are to thrive as a nation." Gideon's earnestness broke through the tension like a flame igniting the embers of longing. Slowly, hearts began to soften. "You witness in this victory," he proclaimed, "a testament to the Lord's sovereignty. Let us be the instruments of his grace, so that his name may spread across the earth." With renewed determination, the people began to speak words of repentance and covenant, casting aside their desires for earthly power. As the sun dipped beyond the horizon, they pledged to seek the Lord with all their hearts, vowing to walk in his ways and trust his guidance. And it came to pass that days turned to weeks, and weeks to months. Gideon led Israel in righteousness, calling upon the people to rise to the challenges before them, honoring the Lord in all their interactions. Yet the struggles of this new commitment were palpable, as old habits clashed with fresh resolve. And then, word came to Gideon of the new threats both near and far. Neighboring nations sought to rise against Israel, envious of their newfound strength. Gideon felt the stirring of fear among his people, yet he turned to God, earnestly seeking wisdom. "Lord, how might we stand against these assaults?" he prayed. feeling the weight of their covenant pressing against his heart. At that moment, a vision filled his mind, vivid and powerful. Strength in unity, he heard clearly, resonating with divine promise. As Gideon shared this insight with Israel, he felt the renewed strength in the obedience of the people. Let us prepare for battle, not with mere swords and shields, but with hearts aligned in faith. And so, Israel came together, tribes united as one, lifting their voices in worship, wielding the power of faith in God as their shield. The clamor of enemies faded into the background noise as the hearts of Israel shone brightly with hope, undergirded by the profound understanding of their collective covenant with the Almighty. The battle that awaited them this time was not merely one of flesh and blood. It was a divine test of their faith, loyalty, and courage. Together we shall prevail, Gideon proclaimed, rallying this beloved nation around the enduring truth of God's covenant. And in that sacred moment, Gideon understood profoundly that even amidst the victories and defeats ahead, God was faithful, and his enduring promises would be the anchor amidst every storm. The journey of Israel surpassed the realms of victory and loss, stretching into the vast ever-unfolding tapestry of his divine purpose, meant not just for them, but for generations yet to come. The echo of their hearts transformed and renewed rang true as they set forth into the dawn of a new chapter. For God has chosen us, Gideon declared, his faith rising with fervor as they marched together, ready to forge ahead, emboldened by the eternal promises of the Lord. This victory was not the end, but rather a defining moment in the journey of fulfillment. A reminder that in every trial faced, God's hand was guiding them along the path of righteousness, leading them toward a future painted with his glory. Let us then heed the call as they did, to stand firm in faith during our trials, and to unite in our pursuit of God's promise, spread his word, and be vessels of his truth. And as we close this incredible story, I invite you, dear friends, to take action today. Make sure to subscribe immediately to the channel, to stay connected with God's word, and not miss the next powerful biblical stories that can transform your life. Leave a like now, for this is the moment to help spread biblical truth through the algorithm to reach more hearts. Comment below with your spiritual reflections and share how this powerful biblical story impacted your faith journey. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth today. Together, let us amplify his glory and bring hope to the world.